You cannot escape the sea on Cape Ann. The smell of the salt air penetrates everything, and the sound of the surf and gulls are ever present. Temperatures on land are moderated by these waters, which cool the air in summer and warm it in winter. 4 coastal communities make up Cape Ann: Gloucester, Manchester, Essex, and Rockport. Viewed from the air, the coastline resembles the exaggerated edges of a jigsaw puzzle. Twice each day, the tide advances and recedes along the shoreline, pushed and pulled by the gravitational forces of the moon. At times, the ocean is calm and serene, its waves landing softly along the shore. Waves are born on the wind, and on average, 14,000 waves make landfall on our coast each day. When nor'easters blow in, the ocean seems to boil like a witch's cauldron, producing huge waves that crash and cascade over rocks and breakwaters. Most of the shoreline is composed of long granite headlands, with small sandy beaches nestled in between. Plants or animals living along the tide line live in an environment of extremes. Twice each day, they must endure being submerged in salty waters, as well as exposed to dry open air. They need to hold fast to rocks or shifting sands so as not to be crushed, carried out to sea, or beached by the action of tides and waves. Walking these shorelines during low tide introduces you to many of the creatures that make their home here. If walking barefoot, it's the barnacles that normally get your attention first. Their sharp shells can draw blood if you're not careful. Barnacles are crustaceans, related to shrimp, that secrete calcium plates that anchor them to rocks and protect their soft bodies. When submerged, they filter the waters around them with fan-like appendages for plankton. Periwinkles are often the most numerous snail in the intertidal zone. They graze on the abundant seaweed that encompasses the rocks. When exposed to air, they produce a mucus that hardens, cementing them in place and keeping moisture within their gills, thus securing their survival in the open air. Blue mussels are also common here. They are filter feeders that settle onto the rocks in large colonies. They anchor themselves to rocks by secreting strong byssal threads that are often still visible after the mussel moves or is dislodged by a predator. A common predator of mussels is the dog whelk. Its tongue is capable of drilling holes through the shells of mussels, the tiny holes clearly visible on these discarded shells. Dog whelks come in a variety of colors, some colors indicating what the whelks have fed on. Seaweeds blanket these rocks, the most common being knotweed. It gets its name from the large bladders filled with gas in the middle of the fronds that resemble knots. Another type of seaweed is Irish moss. This reddish-colored seaweed forms dense, often extensive patches of short algae below the knotweed. When observed underwater, it often displays a blue luminescent glow along the ends of its fronds. Shorebirds, like the purple sandpiper, feed at low tide among the seaweeds for small invertebrates. Tide pools are also great places to explore. They are found among the rocks that hold seawater when the tide goes out. These pools are often brilliantly colored or decorated like a watery botanical garden. Crabs hide beneath rocks and seaweed in these pools, and when exposed, they quickly retreat back to cover, avoiding the hungry gulls that patrol the coastline. You can often find many animals here that live beyond the intertidal zone, for some of these pools are quite deep, holding their waters continually. One of the more entertaining creatures along the rocky shore is the hermit crab. These crabs use the shells of other animals to live in, and often fight with each other to gain the best shell. Hermit crabs eat both plant and animal matter, and are opportunistic scavengers that take advantage of any dead animals they find. On rocks exposed by low tide, harbor seals can be seen basking in the sun. They lounge about waiting for high tide, when they will return to the water to feed on fish, squid, crabs, and shellfish. Rafts of sea ducks float just offshore, periodically diving beneath the surface in search of food. Islands along Cape Anne's coast are magnets for many breeding birds in spring. Herring and black-backed gulls often colonize the rocky beaches above the high tide line. Their nests are constructed with whatever seaweeds, grasses, or even beach litter is close by. Their eggs, well camouflaged, hatch in about a month. Their young are born precocial, covered in down feathers, and ready to walk, run, and hide shortly after hatching. Protective parents often squabble with each other when a threat to their young is perceived. Higher up in the beach on the granite outcroppings, cormorants nest. They are under constant threat from gulls trying to make a meal of their eggs and young, and must be ever vigilant to protect them. Trees that grow on islands are often dwarf representatives of their mainland species, kept stunted by the constant salt spray winds. On these islands, provided they are free from human disturbance, egrets, herons, and glossy ibises nest in large colonies. Great egrets were hunted nearly to extinction for their plumes in the late 19th century, sparking conservation movements and some of the first laws to protect birds. Their nests are made in the forks of these short trees, constructed with sticks and branches. They often use these nests year after year, adding a new layer of sticks each season. Their eggs hatch in about a month, and nestlings compete fiercely with each other for food from their parents. In another month, they will be ready to leave the nest and take flight. Back along the coastline, there are many bays and estuaries to explore, along with one of the most productive habitats on our planet, the salt marsh. 2/3 of all marine fish and shellfish depend on salt marshes during some portion of their lives. Cape Anne is blessed not only with its beautiful rugged coastline, but also its large tracts of forest with easily accessible trails to hike and explore. The forests are predominantly oaks and pines, with many other deciduous and evergreen trees and shrubs mixed in. Exposed rocks often support Lilliputian communities of lichen, moss, ferns, and wildflowers. These islands of rock take on new meaning when you consider the geological history of Cape Anne. 100,000 years ago, most of North America was covered by a vast ice sheet. Cape Anne is a terminal moraine, a point that marks the farthest advance of the glacier where heavier rocks and stones were carried and deposited. Large boulders, called erratics, litter the landscape. Some were carried by the glacier from as far away as Newfoundland and dropped here. As the glacier began to melt 14,000 years ago, it left behind sand, clay, and gravel, along with rocks and boulders, all the mineral materials necessary for establishing plant life, except for one ingredient, organic material. Without this, no plants could grow. But one organism can colonize these sterile environments and set the stage for all others to follow: the lichens. Lichens are not true plants. They are fungi and algae working together in a mutualistic relationship to colonize these rocks. Over thousands of years, the lichens produce enough organic material that collects between rocks for other plants to colonize. It is these humble beginnings that created the forests we see today. In early spring, the sweet smell of humus and decaying leaves permeates the air. It is the scent of promise and renewal, evidenced by the flowering of spring ephemerals carpeting the woodland floor. These ephemerals bloom before the trees leaf out and the forest canopy closes over them. Their growing season is incredibly short, many disappearing by summer. Other woodland wildflowers that tolerate partial or deep shade will pick up where the ephemeral flowers leave off. All these flowering plants are important for early emerging nectaring bees and other insects. Hidden within these forests are small depressions of water called vernal pools. These pools come to life well before any forest flowers bloom or leaves emerge. Vernal pools can often be located in late March and April by listening for the duck-like calls of wood frogs. During most of the winter, these frogs lie frozen beneath the leaf litter of the forest floor. They are able to freeze solid due to the presence of glycerin, a natural antifreeze in their cells. Paired frogs attach their eggs to sticks and branches that float along the surface of the water. Spotted salamanders are also migrating to these pools at this time to breed. These salamanders can reach a length of 9 inches and live for 20 years. Their spots are as individual as snowflakes. For most of the year, they live underground, using the tunnels of moles and voles to hunt invertebrates. Wood frogs and spotted salamanders only come to these pools to breed. Afterwards, they return to the forest, and they will not return to these pools again until next year. The eggs left behind will develop quickly in these warming waters. Once the eggs hatch, the young begin a race to develop the adaptations to a life on land. But they must be quick about it, for these pools may dry up as the season progresses. In late spring, the leaves of trees and shrubs are breaking out of their protective buds that kept them safe from the cold and desiccating winds of winter. There seems to be a sense of urgency in these deciduous plants to unfurl their leaves and begin harvesting the light of the sun. They do, after all, only wear their coat of leaves for 6 months of the year. And as the young tender leaves and flowers emerge, so do the army of insects that feed on them. Thousands of species of caterpillars and other insects are descending on this woodland salad bar. One of the most noticeable is the eastern tent caterpillar, whose conspicuous web is spun in the forks of trees. It is this assault by insects that fuels one of the most anticipated bird migrations of the year, the wood warblers. If March is the beginning of the bird migration on Cape Ann, it reaches its peak in May with the arrival of these small, colorful birds, which have been following the eruption of insects northward from their wintering grounds in South and Central America. It is this biomass of insect food that makes these trips possible. Without it, these birds would starve before reaching their breeding grounds throughout North America. Birds that choose to nest in these woodlands do so either on the ground, in trees and shrubs, or the cavities of trees. But inevitably, there are some casualties along the way, and one small predator of the forest is never above taking advantage of a free meal. Not often seen, this animal travels just below the soil and leaf litter of the forest floor. This is the short-tailed shrew, an animal that could easily be called the tiger of the leaf litter. It is only one of the few poisonous mammals in the world. Venom in its saliva paralyzes prey such as earthworms in order to store them for later consumption. Its metabolism is so high that it is at constant risk of starving to death, often eating as much as 3 times its weight in food each day. Other predators, like snakes, patrol these woodlands in search of prey. Even though many of these snakes are active during the day, their camouflage and secretive nature often guarantee their privacy. One of the most beautiful snakes is the ringnecked, with its yellow or orange belly. All adult frogs need to return to water to mate and lay eggs, but many spend the better part of their lives in these woodlands. The spring peeper, a little over an inch in length, is our smallest frog. More often heard than seen, this frog is easily identified by the X tattooed on its back. American toads blend in perfectly with the forest floor, where they lie in wait for prey. Despite its common name, the gray tree frog can be gray, green, white, or any combination of these colors. These frogs are the chameleons of the eastern forest. Their skin color changes to match their background, making them virtually invisible to predators. Their feet have large toe pads that help them cling to all types of surfaces. They hunt in shrubs and trees, feeding predominantly on moths in the evening. Whereas most male frogs go to water to call for mates, gray tree frogs call from the branches of trees to attract a female in the forest canopy before making their way together to ponds to breed. Along the woodland's edge, where forest meets field, other species of frogs can be found. All frogs are predators, but as so often happens in nature, sometimes the predator becomes the prey. This spring peeper jumped straight into the web of a garden spider, sealing its fate. There are no rewards or punishments in nature, only consequences. Chipmunks appear and disappear from stone walls, while gray squirrels sound out their alarm calls from trees. Other mammals inhabit our forests, but their secretive nature and nocturnal lifestyle often only allow fleeting glimpses of them. Some mammals are more numerous in our urban areas due to the abundance of food in the form of trash. Red foxes are common on Cape Ann. Their kits can often be seen playing on spring days. White-tailed deer take shelter in forests, venturing out in early evening to browse along their edges or in adjacent fields. There is also the beautiful yet controversial newcomer, the eastern coyote, an animal that has spawned either a love or hate relationship with its arrival. Freshwater environments are dynamic ecosystems that support many species of plants and animals. Swamps, marshes, ponds, and lakes can be found throughout Cape Ann. One of the first flowers to bloom in the new year occurs in these wetlands in March. But this is not a flower you would pick for your loved one. Skunk cabbage is unique among plants in that it is capable of generating its own heat, melting snow around it, making its pineapple-like flower available to pollinators. It smells like rotten flesh, the perfect scent to attract its main pollinators, flies. Many aquatic plants bloom throughout the season, decorating the wetlands in many shades of color and providing valuable nectaring flowers to many pollinators. These are just some of the flowers you may find throughout the season as you explore these wetlands. Some of the most interesting wetlands found on Cape Ann are bogs. Due to the extreme conditions that exist in bogs, some plants have evolved a bizarre way of attaining essential minerals to survive. They have become carnivorous. Sundews are tiny plants. Their small leaves are covered with reddish hairs that exude a sticky juice that glistens like morning dewdrops. These droplets act like flypaper traps, holding small and large insects attracted to them. As an insect struggles to escape, the leaves begin to fold over the insect, further securing it. Pitcher plants employ a different strategy. Their modified leaves form a pitcher that holds rainwater. Insects are attracted to its reddish veins, landing on the waxy, slippery lip and falling into its pool. Downward pointing hairs on the inside of the pitcher prevent insects from escaping. Eventually, prey that fall in drown, sinking to the bottom where bacteria and enzymes, acting as digestive fluids, break down the insect for the plant to absorb. Dragonflies patrol these waters, catching insects on the wing and resting occasionally on plants when their stomachs are full. These wetland habitats are where you will hear the breeding chorus of many frogs and toads throughout the spring months. Listening and learning the calls of these amphibians is a great way to know when these frogs begin their mating rituals. Birds, like this great blue heron, hunt along the edges for fish and frogs, while this solitary sandpiper stops in to feed and fuel up during its migration. Many other birds nest in these aquatic environments, hiding their nests in its deep vegetation. Turtles are often seen swimming or sunning themselves on submerged logs. Female turtles venture up onto land in June to find warm, sunny spots to lay their eggs. They excavate their nests by digging a hole with their back legs. When deep enough, they deposit their eggs within, carefully covering them back up with soil. Many of these nests are quickly predated on by a host of animals. Those that do survive will emerge in September. Where cattails flourish, so do muskrats. These These rabbit-sized rodents can often be seen feeding on hummocks in these wetlands. Otter families can be observed in the fall when the females take their kits from their dens to begin exploring their world. They keep in contact with each other with bird-like chirps as the young explore their environment. The mother's responsibility is to teach her young to survive on their own, and withholding food is one way to encourage the young to hunt and feed for themselves. Keeping to their word, beavers are busy building and repairing their dams, and have also taken on the responsibility of raising young. The largest rodents in North America, beavers give birth to 4 to 6 kits each year. The young of the previous year often stay on to help raise and protect the new kits. The family patrols the waters around their lodge, keeping an eye on things. Anything suspicious or alarming will cause one of them to slap its flat tail on the water, alerting others of possible danger. Beavers keep their fur waterproof by secreting an oily substance that they apply while grooming. Their lodges are constructed with sticks and mud, and the entrance is located underwater. Beavers are very good at taking down trees, but they are not so good at figuring out where they will fall, as this beaver skeleton shows. One look at their front teeth and you quickly understand how they can take down such large trees. Beavers have made a remarkable recovery throughout our region, creating new wetland habitat for wildlife to prosper. Getting to know the landscape around you is like learning to speak a foreign language. You cannot hope for quick and easy fluency, but slowly, you begin to accumulate a vocabulary of understandable observations. You begin to pick up on the rhythmic patterns of the seasons, when blackbirds return, when the mountain laurels bloom, or when the different choruses of frogs and toads will sing. It is these humble beginnings that can set the course for a lifetime of learning and discovery, as you explore the natural world around Cape Ann.